The year was 2847, and humanity had spread across 3 star systems. But in the Great Galactic Coalition, humans were nothing special. 47 alien species looked down on them. They called humans aggressive. They called them dangerous. They called them primitive warmongers who bred too fast and fought too eagerly. Admiral Park Do-yoon had heard all these insults before. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, watching the stars through the main window. His gray hair was cut short, and his face carried the scars of 30 years of military service. He was a calm man, but those who knew him understood that his calmness hid a mind sharper than any blade. The night shift was quiet. Most of the crew was sleeping. Only the essential officers remained at their stations, monitoring the endless emptiness of space. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana sat at the communications console. She was young for her rank, only 32, but she had earned her position through skill and hard work. She spoke 14 alien languages fluently. Her job was to listen to the voices of the galaxy and translate them for her commanders. Tonight, she heard something strange. A burst of static came through her headphones. Then words, broken and desperate, in the common language of the Coalition. Hana sat up straight and adjusted her equipment. The signal was weak, traveling across hundreds of light years, but she could make out the message. "This is High Counselor Ven Thalas of the Galactic Coalition. We are transmitting on all frequencies. Volantis is under attack. The Harrow Swarm has broken through our defenses. Our fleet is destroyed. Billions are dying. We beg anyone who can hear this, please, send help. We will accept aid from any species at all. Please, we are dying." The message repeated, again and again. Hana's hands trembled as she recorded the transmission. Volantis was the capital world of the Coalition. It was the heart of galactic civilization. And now, it was burning. She rushed to Admiral Park's ready room and played the message for him. The old admiral listened without expression. When it ended, he closed his eyes for a long moment. "The Harrow Swarm," he said quietly. "We warned them. 20 years ago, we detected strange signals from beyond mapped space. We told the Coalition something was coming. They laughed at us. They said humans see enemies everywhere because we are a violent species." "Sir," Hana said, "what do we do?" Park opened his eyes. "We help them." "But sir, the Coalition has treated us terribly. They blocked our expansion. They refused us seats on their councils. They called us animals." "Yes," Park agreed. "They did. And now their children are being eaten by monsters. Should we let them die because their leaders were fools?" Hana had no answer to that. Admiral Park stood and walked to his communications panel. He opened a channel to Earth Command. Within minutes, he was speaking directly to Ambassador Kang Ji-woo, humanity's representative to the Coalition. Ji-woo was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that hid a steel will. She had spent 40 years trying to improve humanity's reputation in the galaxy. 40 years of being ignored, insulted, and dismissed. When she heard the distress call, tears ran down her cheeks. "We have to help them," she said. "Not for politics, not for advantage, because it is the right thing to do." Admiral Park nodded. "I agree. But to save Volantis, we will need more than the Third Fleet. We will need everything." There was silence on the channel. Both of them knew what he meant. "The Reserve Fleet," Ji-woo whispered. "Are you certain?" "The Coalition's military is destroyed. They had 800 warships at Volantis, all gone. Whatever this swarm is, it is beyond anything the galaxy has faced. Normal measures will not work. We need the Iron Wolves." The Iron Wolves. That was the secret name for humanity's emergency reserve fleet. During the border wars, 200 years ago, humanity had nearly been wiped out by hostile alien species. They survived, but they learned a lesson: never be weak again. Never be unprepared. So they built ships, terrible ships, Ships carrying weapons so destructive that the Coalition had banned them. Ships hidden in secret shipyards, maintained by skeleton crews, waiting for the day when humanity faced extinction. That day had not come. But now, those ships would fly for a different reason. Admiral Park sent the authorization codes. Across the solar system, in hidden bases on moons and asteroids, alarms began to sound. Lights flickered on in ships that had not moved in decades. Crews were recalled from retirement. Engineers rushed to activate ancient systems. Captain Bae Sun-ho was fishing on a quiet lake in Korea when his phone buzzed. He was 67 years old, his hair completely white, his body tired from a lifetime of war. He looked at the message and smiled a cold smile. "Finally," he said. Sergeant Major Cho Tae-won was teaching hand-to-hand combat at a military academy when the call came. He was 55, built like a mountain, with hands that had killed more enemies than he could count. His students watched in confusion as their instructor suddenly stood at attention. "Class dismissed," he said. "Permanently." Chief Engineer Moon Yaren was already at the shipyards. She never left. For 15 years, she had maintained the reserve fleet alone, believing that one day they would be needed. Now that day had come, and she had 72 hours to make miracles happen. And in the darkness of space, the great dreadnoughts began to wake. 12 of them, each 5 kilometers long, carrying enough firepower to shatter planets. 40 battlecruisers, 200 support vessels. The largest and most powerful fleet humanity had ever assembled. The Iron Wolves were rising, and the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of. The shipyards of Earth's moon had been silent for 15 years. Now they roared with activity. Thousands of workers rushed through corridors that had gathered dust for decades. Machines that had slept came alive with thunder and fire. Chief Engineer Moon Yaren stood at the center of the chaos, giving orders through 3 different communication channels at once. She had not slept in 4 days. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking from too much coffee, but her mind was sharp as ever. She knew every ship in the reserve fleet. She knew every wire, every engine, every weapon system. These ships were her children, and now they were going to war. "Reactor 7 on the Eternal Fury is showing fluctuations," a technician reported. "Bypass the secondary cooling system and route power through the auxiliary lines," Yaren replied without hesitation. "She will hold. She always does." The Eternal Fury was the oldest dreadnought in the fleet. She had fought in the border wars 2 centuries ago. Her hull carried scars from 100 battles. Most people thought she should have been scrapped long ago. But Yaren had kept her ready, because she knew something that others had forgotten. Old ships have souls, and the Fury's soul was hungry for one last fight. Captain Bae Sun-ho arrived at the shipyard on a shuttle from Earth. He walked slowly through the corridors, his old bones aching from the journey. Workers stopped and stared. Everyone knew who he was. The most decorated captain in human history. The man who had single-handedly held the line at the Battle of Proxima. The man they called the Ghost of the Void. He reached the main hangar and stopped. Before him, the Eternal Fury floated in her dock, massive and ancient and terrible. Her black hull absorbed the light around her. Her weapon arrays stretched like claws. She was not a beautiful ship. She was a killing machine, pure and simple. Sun-ho smiled. "Hello, old friend," he whispered. "Ready for one more dance?" The ship's lights flickered once, as if in answer. He boarded and made his way to the bridge. The command chair was exactly as he remembered it, worn from decades of use, shaped to his body like a second skin. He sat down and felt something he had not felt in 15 years. Purpose. "All systems online," the computer reported. "Weapons charged, engines ready. Awaiting orders." "Soon," Sun-ho said. "Very soon." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Old soldiers returned to old ships. Retired officers put on uniforms that still fit. Men and women who had sworn they would never fight again found themselves checking weapons and running diagnostics. Sergeant Major Cho Tae-wan assembled his Marines in the cargo bay of the assault carrier Thunder's Voice. 3,000 soldiers stood in perfect lines, their armor gleaming under the harsh lights. These were the first orbital Marines, the most elite fighting force humanity had ever produced. They specialized in boarding operations, in fighting inside enemy ships, in close-quarters combat where there was no room for error. Tae-wan walked through their ranks, looking each soldier in the eye. He was not a man of many words. He did not need to be. His presence alone was enough to inspire or terrify. "You know why we are here," he said, his deep voice echoing through the bay. "The galaxy thinks we are monsters. They think we are savages who only know how to destroy. Today, we prove them right." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we prove it to the right enemy. There are creatures out there eating innocent people alive, children, families, entire civilizations. And we are going to stop them." He raised his fist. "We are the hammer, and hammers do not show mercy." 3,000 fists rose in response. No cheers, no shouting, just silent determination. In orbit around Earth, the fleet assembled. Ship after ship emerged from hidden bases and took position. Coalition observers watched in stunned disbelief. They had been monitoring humanity for centuries. They had counted every warship, tracked every military exercise. They thought they knew exactly how strong humanity was. They were wrong. "Impossible," one observer transmitted to his government. "They have 12 dreadnoughts. 12. Each one is larger than anything in our fleet. And the weapons are banned. Kinetic accelerators, antimatter torpedoes, planet crackers. How did they hide all of this?" The answer was simple. Humanity had learned to never show its full strength. The galaxy saw what humans wanted them to see. The reserve fleet had always been there, waiting in the shadows, ready for the day when it would be needed. Admiral Park Do-yun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the fleet arranged before him. 252 ships carrying over 2 million soldiers and crew. The largest military force in human history. He opened a channel to all vessels. "Brothers and sisters," he said, "you know our mission. The Galactic Coalition called us barbarians. They called us warmongers. They were not wrong. We are all of those things. But we are also something else. We are protectors. We are the ones who stand between the darkness and the innocent. Today, we fly to save people who have never shown us kindness. We fly to protect those who fear and despise us." He paused, his voice growing harder. "And we will succeed. Because that is what humans do. We survive, we fight, we win. Not because we are the strongest or the smartest, but because we never, ever give up." The fleet began to move, accelerating toward the edge of the solar system. "Set course for Volantis," Admiral Park ordered. "Maximum speed, and may whatever gods exist have mercy on our enemies. Because we will not." The Iron Wolves leaped into faster-than-light travel, vanishing from Earth's sky in a flash of light. 18 hours to Volantis, 18 hours until the galaxy learned what humanity truly was. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Volantis system. For a moment, there was only silence on every bridge. Then the sensors began showing what lay ahead, and that silence became horror. Volantis was burning. The planet had once been beautiful, covered in silver cities and blue oceans. Now fires raged across entire continents. Smoke clouds covered half the world. The orbital stations that had housed millions were torn apart, floating in pieces through space. And everywhere, there were ships. The Harrow Swarm. Ensign Lee Minji sat at the tactical station of the Indomitable, her hands frozen over her console. She was 24 years old, fresh from the academy, on her first real deployment. Nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "Counting enemy vessels," she reported, her voice shaking. 10,000, 20,000, 30. She stopped. "Sir, I cannot count them all. There are too many." Admiral Park's face remained calm, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly. "Classification? Multiple types. Small fighters, thousands of them. Medium cruisers, and—" Minji zoomed her display on the largest shapes. "Hive carriers. At least 50. Each one is over 20 kilometers long." The hive carriers looked like living things because they were. The Harrow swarm was not a fleet of machines. It was a biological entity, a hive mind that traveled through space, consuming everything in its path. Each ship was grown, not built. Each fighter was a creature bred for war. And at the center of it all, hidden within the largest carriers, were the command intelligences that controlled the entire swarm. Dr. Shin Yunji had joined the fleet as a xenobiologist. Her job was to understand alien life. But she had never seen anything like this. She studied the sensor data with growing dread. "They are not just killing," she said quietly. "They are harvesting. Look at these readings. The swarm is collecting organic matter from the planet. Living beings. They are being converted into raw material for new swarm units." The bridge crew absorbed this information in sick silence. Down on Volantis, billions of people were being eaten alive. Their bodies would become food for the very creatures destroying them. "Incoming transmission," Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana reported. "It is from the Coalition survivors. They are hiding on Volantis's largest moon." Admiral Park nodded. "Put it through." A hologram flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like a tall insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. High Counselor Venthalas. He looked broken. His carapace was cracked, and 2 of his arms hung limp at his sides. "Human fleet," he said. "You came. We did not believe. We did not think." He stopped, struggling to compose himself. "You must leave. Now. While you still can. Nothing can stop the swarm. We had 800 warships, the finest fleet in the galaxy. They destroyed us in 6 hours. Your 200 ships cannot hope to—" "With respect, Counselor," Admiral Park interrupted. "We did not travel 18 hours to run away. We came to fight. You do not understand. The swarm is endless. For every ship you destroy, 10 more appear. We have tried everything. Nothing works. You have not tried us." Silence. Venathalas stared at the human admiral as if he had gone mad. In the tactical center, Ensign Minji was studying the swarm's movements. Something about them bothered her. At first, the alien ships seemed to move randomly, like insects swarming around food. But the longer she watched, the more she noticed patterns. "Admiral," she said suddenly, "I think I have found something. The swarm is not random. Look at these formations. They respond to threats in coordinated waves. The timing is too perfect to be individual decisions. They are being controlled." Dr. Yunji leaned over her shoulder. "A hive mind needs a brain. If we can identify the control centers—" "Already on it." Minji's fingers flew across her console. "There, 3 vessels near the planet's core. They are larger than the others, but they are not fighting. They are just directing, like commanders." Admiral Park studied the display. "Command ships, cut off the head, and the body dies." "It is a theory," Yunji cautioned. "We cannot be certain." "Then let us test it." The Admiral turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. We are going in. Wing Commander Oh Junho will lead the first strike." On the carrier Swift Vengeance, Wing Commander Oh Junho received his orders. He was 38 years old, with a reputation for being arrogant, reckless, and absolutely brilliant in a cockpit. He had flown 200 combat missions and never lost a wingman. Today, he knew that record would end. "All squadrons," he announced. "This is not going to be easy. Half of us will probably not come back. But every minute we buy, every ship we destroy, means more time for the civilians below. That is what we are here for. Not glory, not survival, just time." He climbed into his fighter, a sleek machine called the Black Star, and launched into space. 4,000 human fighters followed him, streaming toward the swarm like a swarm of their own. The Harrow swarm turned to face them. Millions of biofighters broke from the main mass and surged forward. The two forces met in a storm of fire and death. And somewhere in the heart of the swarm, the Central Intelligence felt something it had not experienced in 10,000 years: uncertainty. These new creatures were different. They did not run. They did not surrender. They flew straight into death with screaming engines and blazing weapons. The swarm had consumed 1,000 civilizations. It had never faced anything like humanity. The battle had begun. The space around Volantis became hell. Human fighters tore through the first wave of swarm drones, their weapons cutting bright lines through the darkness. Wing Commander Oh Junho flew at the front, his Black Star dancing between enemies, leaving explosions in his wake. He had never felt so alive. "Break left, Gold Squadron," he shouted. "Red Squadron, cover the bombers. Do not let anything through." But the swarm was endless. For every drone destroyed, 3 more took its place. Human pilots began to fall, their fighters consumed by acid and claws and biological weapons that melted through armor. On the Indomitable, Admiral Park watched the battle unfold. The fighter screen was buying time, but it was not enough. The main fleet had to engage. "All dreadnoughts advance," he ordered. "Formation hammer. Weapons free." The 12 dreadnoughts moved forward, each one a mountain of metal and death. At the front flew the Eternal Fury, Captain Bei Sunho in command. The old man sat in his chair with his eyes closed, listening to his ship like a musician listening to an instrument. "Range to primary targets?" he asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing," his weapons officer replied. "Hold fire." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The swarm was launching attacks against them now. Biomissiles slammed into their shields, each impact shaking the massive ship. 40,000 kilometers. Hold. 30,000. Sir, we are taking heavy damage to forward sections. Hold. 20,000 kilometers. Captain Sunho opened his eyes. Fire. The Eternal Fury's main batteries spoke. They were kinetic accelerators, weapons that fired building-sized projectiles at a fraction of the speed of light. Each shot carried more energy than a nuclear bomb. The Coalition had banned these weapons because they were too destructive. The swarm learned why. The first volley tore through a hive carrier like paper. The 20-kilometer creature simply came apart, its organic hull shredded by impacts moving too fast to see. Secondary explosions rippled through its body as internal systems failed. 11 other dreadnoughts fired at the same moment. More hive carriers died. The swarm screamed, millions of voices crying out in pain and rage through the hive mind. "They felt that," Dr. Yunji reported from her station. "The hive mind is connected to every unit. When we kill one, they all feel it." "Good," Admiral Park said coldly. "Let them feel it." The battle erupted into full chaos. Human battlecruisers engaged medium swarm vessels, their weapons blazing. Support ships launched missiles by the thousands, filling space with explosions. The swarm threw everything it had at the human fleet, overwhelming through sheer numbers. Ships began to die on both sides. The cruiser Unyielding was swarmed by hundreds of fighters that tore through her hull. The battlecruiser Ironheart lost her engines and drifted helplessly until a hive carrier consumed her whole. Men and women died in fire and vacuum and darkness. But they did not break. They did not run. On the Thunder's voice, Sergeant Major Cho Taewon received his orders. A hive carrier had been damaged and was vulnerable. His Marines would board it and destroy it from within. "This is what we trained for," he told his soldiers as they loaded into assault shuttles. "Close quarters, no room for fear. Kill everything that moves. Plant the charges, get out, simple." The shuttles launched, screaming toward the wounded carrier. Swarm fighters tried to intercept them, but covering fire from the fleet created a path through the chaos. Taewon's shuttle punched through the carrier's weakened hull and crashed into a corridor of living tissue. The walls pulsed with organic matter. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of blood and death. "Move!" Taewon roared. "Forward!" The Marines charged into the alien ship, their weapons lighting up the darkness. Swarm defenders emerged from the walls themselves, creatures of claw and acid and hunger. The fighting was brutal, hand-to-hand in places, humans and aliens killing each other in the narrow passages. Taewon led from the front, his massive frame crushing enemies beneath his armored fists. He had lost soldiers before, but never like this. The swarm was everywhere, in the walls, the floor, the ceiling. His Marines fell around him, screaming, but they pushed forward, step by bloody step. They fought toward the carrier's brain core, the organic center that controlled the entire vessel. Outside, the battle reached its peak. Wing Commander Oh Jun-ho had lost half his squadrons, but he had also identified a path to the first command ship. "All remaining fighters, follow me," he ordered. "We are going to cut off the head." His Black Star dove toward the command vessel, enemy fire filling the space around him. One by one, his wingmen were destroyed, their fighters exploding into debris. He did not stop. "For Earth!" he screamed as he launched his final payload directly into the command ship's core. The explosion consumed him, but it also consumed the enemy. The first command ship died. Throughout the swarm, millions of units suddenly lost coordination. Ships collided with each other. Fighters flew in circles. The hive mind shattered. On the Indomitable, Ensign Minji shouted in triumph, "It worked! The swarm is disrupted." "Target the other command ships," Admiral Park ordered. "All batteries. Everything we have." The dreadnoughts turned their weapons on the second command vessel. The concentrated fire of 12 capital ships struck it at once. Nothing could survive such destruction. The second command ship exploded in a ball of biomatter. Inside the wounded carrier, Sergeant Major Taewon reached the brain core with only 50 Marines remaining. They planted their charges and ran, stumbling through corridors filling with defensive creatures. The explosion followed them out. The carrier died, taking thousands of swarm units with it. The fleet focused on the third and final command ship. It tried to retreat, but the human vessels pursued relentlessly. Captain Sunho brought the Eternal Fury directly alongside it, so close their hulls nearly touched. "Fire everything," he said calmly. The dreadnought emptied her weapons into the command ship at point-blank range. Both vessels were damaged by the exchange, but the Eternal Fury was built to survive. The command ship was not. When the explosions cleared, the third command ship was dead, and the swarm began to flee. For the first time in 10,000 years, it retreated from a battle. Scattered and confused, its units flew toward the edges of the system, desperate to escape these terrifying new enemies. High Counselor Venthalis watched from his bunker on the moon. Tears streamed from his compound eyes. "What are they?" he whispered. "What are these humans?" He had no answer. But he knew the galaxy would never be the same. The swarm was gone. The battle was over. But the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy with loss. Admiral Park Do-yeon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and read the casualty reports. 40% of the fleet destroyed or damaged beyond repair. 37,000 human lives lost. Ships that had survived the border wars now floated dead in space, their crews killed by an enemy from beyond the stars. But Volantis survived. 8 billion people still lived on the burning world below. Rescue operations had already begun, human shuttles landing to deliver supplies and evacuate survivors. They had won. The cost was terrible, but they had won. Captain Bei Sunho sat alone on the bridge of the Eternal Fury. His ship was dying around him. The damage from the battle had been too severe. Her engines were gone, her weapons were melted, her hull was cracked in 100 places, but she had held. Until the very end, she had held. Sunho placed his hand on the arm of his chair. "Thank you, old friend," he said quietly. "You can rest now. We both can." The ship's lights flickered once, then began to fade. The Eternal Fury was surrendering to her wounds at last. Sunho did not move. He would stay with her until the end, a captain's duty. Chief Engineer Moon Yerin arrived an hour later with a rescue team. She found Sunho still in his chair, still holding his ship's hand as her systems went dark. "Captain," she said gently, "it is time to go." Sunho looked at her with tired eyes. "She was a good ship. The best I ever knew." They left together, the last two people to walk the Eternal Fury's corridors. Behind them, the great dreadnought went silent forever. On the assault carrier, Thunder's Voice, Sergeant Major Cho Taewon visited the medical bay. His Marines had paid a terrible price for their mission. Of the 3,000 who had boarded the shuttles, only 1,200 had returned. He walked among the beds, stopping at each one to speak with the wounded. Some would recover, others would not, but they had all done their duty. A young private, barely 20 years old, grabbed Taewon's hand. Her legs were gone, taken by a swarm creature in the carrier's corridors. "Did we win, Sergeant Major?" she asked. Taewon nodded. "We won." "Good," she smiled weakly. "Then it was worth it." He squeezed her hand and moved on, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. These were his people, his responsibility. Every death was a weight he would carry forever, but they had not died for nothing. That made all the difference. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana intercepted communications from across the galaxy. The news of the battle was spreading faster than light, carried by message drones and emergency broadcasts. Species that had never heard of humanity were now saying their name with awe and fear. The humans won. The humans defeated the swarm. How is this possible? Ambassador Kang Ji-woo arrived at Volantis 3 days later. She walked through refugee camps filled with grateful aliens who bowed as she passed. Many of them had never seen a human before. Now they reached out to touch her as if she were something holy. "Thank you," they said in 100 different languages. "Thank you." Ji-woo accepted their gratitude with quiet grace, but her heart was heavy. She knew the political storm that was coming. The coalition would have to acknowledge humanity now. They would have to treat humans as equals. Some species would accept this. Others would resist. There would be difficulties ahead. High Counselor Venethalis requested a meeting with Admiral Park. The two leaders stood on a balcony overlooking the ruins of Volantis's greatest city. Fires still burned on the horizon. The sky was gray with smoke. "I must ask you something," Venethalis said. "I have asked myself this question since the battle ended, and I cannot find an answer." "Ask," Park said. "Why?" The aliens' compound eyes reflected the destruction around them. "Why did you come? We treated your species terribly. We blocked your expansion. We denied you representation. We called you animals and barbarians. We laughed when you warned us about threats from beyond mapped space." He turned to face the human admiral. "Why did you sacrifice so much for people who showed you nothing but contempt?" Park was silent for a long moment. He looked at the burning city, at the refugees streaming through the streets, at the human soldiers working alongside alien survivors to pull bodies from the rubble. "Because you called," he said finally. "Because someone needed help. That is what humans do. We fight for each other. And when we are at our best, we fight for everyone else too. Even those who do not deserve it? Everyone deserves a chance to survive. Everyone deserves someone willing to stand between them and the darkness." Park turned to face Venethalis directly. We did not come here for gratitude or politics. We came because it was right, because that is who we are." Venthala stared at the human for a long time. Then, slowly, he bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. "I was wrong about your species," he said. "We were all wrong." Ensign Lee Minji was promoted to lieutenant junior grade for her tactical analysis during the battle. Dr. Shin Yunji warned the coalition that the swarm had retreated, not died. It would return someday, and the galaxy needed to prepare. The reserve fleet limped back to Earth orbit. This time, the ships remained visible. No more hiding, no more secrets. Let the galaxy see what humanity could do. Let them remember. Admiral Park Do-hyun stood before the United Earth Council a month later. They asked him to summarize what had happened at Volantis, to explain the sacrifice and the victory. He stood in silence for a moment, remembering the faces of those who had not returned. Wing Commander Oh Junho, who had died laughing as he destroyed the command ship. The Marines who had stormed the carrier. The crews of ships that now existed only as debris in an alien system. Then he spoke. They learned what happens when humans stop holding back, and they learned something else, something more important. He looked at the council members, at the cameras broadcasting his words across human space. They learned that when the darkness comes, when everything seems lost, when all hope is gone, you can call us. We will come. We will fight. And we will never stop. The council chamber erupted in applause, but Park barely heard it. He was thinking of the future. The swarm would return. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humanity would be ready. They would always be ready, because that was who they were. And high above, the surviving ships of the Iron Wolves stood guard over Earth, silent, waiting, ready to answer the next call. Whenever it came, whatever the enemy, humanity would respond. They always would,